A good friend of mine who made a bunch of the Frank Lloyd Wright masks that I wear. His name's Ryan, and he has a company called Masked by Ryan. He's also a flight attendant. So he's in LAX right now because he flies back and forth across the country. That's his specialty. And he sent me a picture of, it was horrible, in just at LAX, which is not that far from where Kim Bixler lives and where Stan lives. And I thought it was just Northern California that was having the problem. Apparently it's down the entire coast, just
Oh yeah.
fire.
And one of my friends last night, their Zoom photo behind them was the Golden Gate Bridge, and I was like, it doesn't look like that anymore.
No, not right now. No, absolutely not.
Everyone was like, what?
So,
Oh, boy.
well, hey, I've already started recording, Jeff. So
Awesome.
welcome to all of our listeners and viewers on the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour. I'm your host, Tim Totten, and we have with us in this recorded session, Jeff Thielemier. Jeff, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
It's great. I'm so glad that you're with me. I do see some interesting things behind you. We'll get into what some of that stuff is, hopefully. It seems like you might be in a school setting or well, your age looks like you're probably at a school setting. So I'm sure we'll hear some interesting things about what you're doing. But before we start, this is the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour, and I always like to start with Not Too Seriously, with 5 not too serious questions. Are you ready for those?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so question number 5 is, name me an architect that maybe most of us don't know or aren't paying attention to, who's still working right now, whose work that you admire and you think we should all know about.
Well, I know one that's not living.
No, you got it. Somebody's got to be alive.
Let's see. That's a good question. Oh.
Or maybe an up and coming architect. Anybody you dealt with who's really like.
I'm drawing a blank. That's the.
Prepare you ahead of time for these, so. Well, that's fine. A designer of any kind, though. You got anything you're particularly fond of?
I'd say my teachers, really. They're both interior designers, and they teach us pretty well.
Fantastic. Are they also practicing interior designers?
Oh, yes.
Well, we'll get into that. That'd be great. So if I did have you name your favorite architect, living or dead, who would it be?
Well, I have 3, but one's obvious, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Okay, give us the other 2. What are the other 2?
Bruce Goff and Fay Jones.
Well, you're in the right area for some of that, aren't you? So we'll get into that too. I'm a huge fan of Fay Jones. I haven't seen very much Bruce Goff in person, just I think 2 or 3 houses. And I was fascinated and slightly weirded out, which was great. I love that actually surprise moment, right?
Oh, yes. The Bavinger house, really. I got to see that before it was torn down.
Really?
And it was like a few months, and they told me, we're going to be redoing the roof here soon. And I'm like, okay. Find out when they redo the roof. Was not redo the roof.
Oh, yeah, they raised the roof and then took it away, apparently, right?
Yeah, and that house was amazingly weird and so really? Cool.
Okay, Bavinger House. I'll have to look it up. Okay, 2 more questions. The one of those questions will be, do you like creamy or crunchy peanut butter? Or no
creamy?
Creamy. Oh, okay, it's a little boring, but I'm going to let you have it. Do you have a favorite flavor jelly that goes with that, or jam?
Not really.
No, anything? You don't care?
I don't care.
Okay. I can't do like blackberry or raspberry because all those little seeds get like stuck in my teeth, and I'm getting to be that age to where it's a problem,
Yeah.
So, we're going to talk to you because you've done a lot of modeling. So, is there a Frank Lloyd Wright design that you have modeled already, or one that you're hoping to model in the future that you just really wish you could spend a lot more time in? You could enjoy that space more, maybe live in it or work in it?
It would be West Hope.
Okay. That's not one that most people would mention, so I think that's fantastic.
I mean, I live not very far from it. So.
Absolutely. So, and just for everyone who's watching, maybe doesn't know it by that name, West Hope, what is it also called?
The Richard Lloyd Jones house.
I've got to walk around that house. I wasn't allowed anywhere near the inside, but they did let me walk around and take pictures, and it was an interesting idea and design. So we'll definitely get into that as well. All right. Well, I have Jeff Thielemier with me because your connection to the architecture world is a couple-fold. So tell us, what's your current occupation, or at least your job in life right now. What are you doing?
Currently, just freelancing in design and an interior design student at Tulsa Community College.
Tulsa Community. There's an interior design class there. That's fantastic. Because I don't know a lot of community colleges or state colleges that have that as a particular field of study. So how did you get into interior design? What made you interested in studying that there in Tulsa?
Well, I was actually originally going to TCC for CAD design, and then I saw the poster and was like, interior design. I didn't know we had one. So I joined that program at the end of spring semester last year, and glad I did. They canceled the program this year.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, phew, good timing. And so I've just joined into the second year now, and it's been a fun program. It's good to learn. There's no math requirements, prerequisites really, like architects would have to. Because I tried the math, I couldn't get through Math Foundations 2. And if not many people know that, that's high school math.
Okay, so you have a little bit of a math challenge, which of course for architects is a gigantic part of it, all of the sort of engineering prospects of it. But of course, interior design lets you still flex those design muscles and that design, that desire to shape a lived environment or a work environment. So, you know, what you're learning so far, is it a 2-year program? Is it longer?
3 year.
3 years, okay, wow, so you still have a little bit of time to go. You know, what surprises you the most? What have you been the most surprised by, since you didn't grow up wanting to be an interior designer necessarily? What have you learned that you didn't expect to?
I mean, I've dabbled in a few interiors, so it doesn't come as a shock. There's nothing new to me. I've studied my design principles for years. My teachers are not keen on me using Frank Lloyd Wright, but I managed to sneak around it.
So that would be good. It would be good to ask, you know, what about Frank Lloyd Wright's interior or other design principles do you really respond to? What's resonating with you today?
The organic architecture, the living aspect of the interior, bringing the outside in.
Have you had a chance to visit a number or at least a couple of Wright interiors to see them in person, other than just, you know, you can study a lot now, luckily, on the internet and with books and other things. Where have you gone yet? Have you been able to do that yet?
Let's see, 2016, I visited the Allen House and Taliesin. Back in 2007, I visited Taliesin West. That was the first time I ever visited a Frank Lloyd Wright outside of the Price Tower. And of course, mentioning the Price Tower since 2005 has been my go-to visiting place. And studying the interior of the apartment and how that worked and how living in that, I just can't imagine living in that tiny little apartment.
Well, I've lived in tiny houses, so I actually love the idea of it. I think the staircase is my biggest holdup.
Same.
That crazy sideways stair. I look at that and say, you know, Mr. Wright, you just obviously you just had to shove this in this corner over here, but it's not the most useful. I felt like the kitchen, though, was actually relatively workable. I felt that made kind of sense. Now, let me ask you, you know, you've named such different locations. You know, Taliesin West is this fascinating tent structure in the desert, and even though it's now made out of more permanent materials, it still feels very much like you're living in a tent. And of course, Taliesin in Wisconsin is so much different. I think it feels more like a sheltering cave, not cave in a bad way, but you know, it's much more permanent than a tent. It has a different feel to it. And then of course you name the spaceship rocket, the rocket ship of Price Tower, which is to me all sci-fi lines and angles and much different feel. They're all so different, but you get the same concepts from them. Do you feel the same organic principles within them?
They all interconnect in a strange, cohesive way. They might be different geometries, different ways of design, different eras, of course, of Frank Lloyd Wright, but all their interiors are like a thread. They're all threaded in the same way.
Yeah, it's great that you can pick up on that and see, that means that if you're able to do that, you can do what a lot of people haven't been able to do, which is extrapolate those organic ideas into designing your own, but still take the ideals and the concepts that he taught. And it always amazes me when people say that something is Frank Lloyd Wright inspired, and they really mean, well, we use some wood and there's some horizontal lines. They don't really mean that we actually, used his design ideals. So what are you bringing over into your own work? What's sort of the go-to, the number one design ideal you try to make sure you bring in from Wright's organic architecture?
I try to bring in as much light as possible. Light decks, like the low ceilings and the squeeze and release. Of course, the code, you can't do 6'8" ceilings very much anymore. But that and the decorativeness, the sustainability of the space as much as possible. Currently, my current project for class is a flower shop. And my teacher's like, Jeff, don't do Frank Lloyd Wright at all. And I said, challenge accepted. And so I went with an Art Nouveau theme with some Gothic revival, but the touch of Frank Lloyd Wright's there. Because you can't just have a flower shop without organic architecture. That just would be wrong. So I decided I'm going to pop in skylights here. Mostly everything that takes place as the art is floral. All the flowers are the art, and that'll be the focus. There will also be built-ins, and it'll flow very well. And it's like, it looks very much like Frank Lloyd Wright would probably do this. I mean, albeit probably not with Art Nouveau, but it's a good thing I studied that over the summer, though, because I was like, I need to branch out a little bit, see what other designs there are. And so it's going to be an interesting concept when we finish it.
Well, that's great. So what's behind you on the board that's written up here on this huge sheet of paper behind you?
Oh, so this is my living wall for my flower shop. It's behind the work counter. So it's basically iron with 2 lanterns and vases throughout. So flowers can be placed in them and basically live in front of 2 windows. So like when you're walking up the street, then you see this like weird display of, it looks like vines. And I was like, this would work perfect.
Yeah, I like, yeah. You want to get them excited and looking in, and it's a nice wall piece behind the art. So much is fascinating to me when I think about really effective Wright spaces, is that there is very little art that isn't the building itself. The building itself becomes the art, which is why so much of other people's furniture just looks terrible, in a space. It's gotta fit properly, and that's pretty great. So you're in your second year in this design, interior design class, but you said you started with CAD design and doing computer aided. So I know that's how you and I have connected, really, because you've been doing a bit of computer aided work on Wright designs and helping to. I think it's, when I think about what people like you are doing, is that you're helping some of us who maybe don't have the vision to look at floor plans and see them in 3 dimensions, or be able to actually go to these places to bring them to life in a way that lets us really get some details. So what started you on that process?
Back about 10 years ago, actually, I was asked to model one of the Frank Lloyd Wright houses. I think it was the Dobkins, if I'm not mistaken. And then, so the owner sent me the plans, and so I was like, okay. It's my first time ever studying floor plans, and then trying to interpret that into a 3D model. And it was about 2 to 3 months, I think, of hard work and trying to figure out how to do these designs. And I look back at it now, and I'm like, I could so much do better with the quality, but it for the time, it was high quality. And now that I'm thinking about it, actually, I requested Samara, actually, originally. That was, so the first home that was private would be Dobkins, and one that was, then I started Pawson about 2009. I didn't finally finish that. I think like 3 iterations of it. Finally finished the 3rd iteration by about 2012.
Now that's the Rose Pawson house that was destroyed in a fire, right?
Yes.
So that one's even more valuable for many of us to see your 3D modeling, is because, you know, the house has been destroyed, and and not that long after it was built in a fire,
Yeah.
Unexpected fire, obviously, and it's impressive for us to be able to get an idea of what it looked like, to be able to walk through it, so to speak.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I even studied the boomer plans for Pawson, and I noticed Wright changed the layout of the living room glass to go out a little further. And I'm like, I think he knew that that curtain was going to catch it on fire. He was against those curtains in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So tell me, that's a pretty big project, even a small house, to say, I'm going to take this on and 3D model the entire thing. You probably don't start with that when you first started 3D modeling. So what did you first start modeling? Like, what was the first things you played with and started designing?
So back in about 06, when I found SketchUp, it was about the summer. And so I started just, throwing lines down and tinkering with that. And I was like, ooh, this is fun. I would make, since I didn't know the scale of things, I just made like enormous designs, basically, that never would probably be built or make sense. But it was a good abstraction. And then I started refining that and figuring out how does the program work a lot to where am today. And I can share that experience as we go through learning AutoCAD for my classmates and stuff. And I'm like, I've been there. It's when you're on a blank screen, it's easy to, lose track of where your scale is.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm like, I get it. I've been there, done that. It's design basic 101. Everyone screws up in CAD the first time. It's not a surprise.
So you started learning SketchUp, which was originally, I think, a Google product, right? Google
Yes.
SketchUp, and I got to tell you, I've played in Google SketchUp, and unlike you, I gave up because it was harder than I could figure out. I mean, I did some basic stuff. I think I designed a very simple house, but certainly not a Frank Lloyd Wright building, and not actually having to interpret plans and create it. You know, the way you're building, literally building it, just because you're using digital stuff. You know, the difference is you have to actually create the digital asset and then put it in place. So if you want a brick, you've got to create the brick and then put it in place. Unlike, I might have a brick shipped in from somewhere and then I have to put it in place. You're actually having to create all of that. That's a big task. So when you decided to start your first one, can I ask how old you were when you started your first Frank Lloyd Wright design in SketchUp?
19.
That's a pretty big task for a 19-year-old, and the fact that you stuck with it and got it done. Now, how long did you say it took the first one to design in the computer?
Let's see. I would say Samara took me about 2 months because I was talking with Linda about that, and then I revisited it about 2013. But it was about 2 months. I was sitting there going, "And design is a lot slower than I thought. I could design a house within like a month."
I think
But
2 months is actually pretty impressive myself. What happens with these 3D models once you finish doing them?
I tried to animate them as much as possible or take photos of them in the model. Or send it to Razine and have him do it. I've started doing the renders because doing the model files are so much bigger now that it's like, how do I send it?
Right.
So it's like, I have to start learning how to use my own rendering program over here. It's not easy. But,
yeah, Racine does some pretty unbelievable work, and I think one of the secrets
Razine probably would share and already has with you is how to make it look so realistic, how to really spend the time in the rendering portion of it. So I think people maybe don't understand what's the difference between modeling and rendering.
Render just basically makes it look more realistic, I think. It's an art form of itself. It does take an artist's eye to pinpoint it. And I learned how to hand render last semester. Oh my gosh. It is an artist's eye. It is, design can be, you draw it on paper, but to bring it to the 3D, it takes another artist. And that artist is you, and you have to figure out how to do that. And it's not an easy thing, especially when you're learning remotely.
I tend to think of it in my mind as the difference between Frank Lloyd Wright drawing a floor plan of a building and doing all of that work and then handing it off like in the early 1900s to Mary Mahoney Griffin and having her do that beautiful, you know, watercolor design that sells it. You know what I mean? Like, like it's all technically accurate in his drawings, completely perfect, but it really comes to life. It breathes in the humanness or the beauty really gets baked in at that almost like he's having her render it for him, you know, and she's sitting there doing a rendering, a drawing of a piece that might be technically accurate in his version. In her version, it's also got, it's been brought to life. So rendering really does that for us as humans, lets us think of it as something we could walk into, you know, be able to actually inhabit it and see it other than this really beautiful technical piece. You know, there's two kinds of beauty there, obviously. Which one? I mean, how many of Wright's buildings have you modeled so far?
Ooh, that's a good number. Let's see.
Well, it's a good thing if you have to count because it means you've done more than 2 or 3.
Let's see. In the span since 2009, I think I've modeled about 5 or 6.
That's quite a lot when you think of, for most of us, won't ever get to one of them and would have difficulty even with that. Do you have one that is a favorite?
Too many. I would say Samara is one of my favorites.
Now tell me, Jeff, have you ever been to Samara?
No.
See, I can't wait for you to get a chance to actually go and see how close it is in terms of how well you got the feeling of it, but also to understand 3-dimensionally as you're sitting in it, how that space really feels. Not that you can't get that from a render, but there is something about being able to sit there and not have to tell a computer to change the light, you know, to have that happen as the sun goes by. And you really can't get an idea of how the sound travels in a room without, you know, you're doing the very best job you can with the computer. But it is another thing to be able to add the extra dimension to it. And I think you'll be able to appreciate it more than most people walking in there for the first time. You'll be able to understand the things that you looked at in such minute detail, why they're there, you know?
See, the Bachman House, the perf, when I went there, I was like, so this is how it feels kind of like to be in a Usonian. I think that was my first Usonian with perf windows, actually.
Got it. Okay. So do you have I know you have some of your work that you were going to share with us or show us.
Yes.
I'm sure you prepared something. So I'd love for you to just walk us through at least some of your designs that some of the designs that you've brought to life with computer modeling and rendering. And we'd love to sort of see what your process looks like and how you do this.
Yes. Let's see if I can share a screen over here.
And I may have to click a button that allows you to share a screen. You never know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, oh, you know what? I'm going to say that you can share. How does that sound?
Yes.
You should be able to do that now. Well, you know, technology is fun. We're all learning how to, and I haven't been in Tulsa anytime lately, so I wouldn't be able to have this conversation with you without technology. So I'm glad it's there. So, oh, look, it works. I pushed the right buttons and you pushed your buttons too.
Yes. So what you're seeing is my project for that I call Tulsa Envision. And so this incorporates Goff's unbuilt designs, preliminary designs for skyscrapers of Tulsa, I even threw a Franklin Wright building or two in there,
Nice.
maybe 3.
So tell me, is this designed in SketchUp?
Yes.
Wow, you went, okay, so here's the parts I could do in SketchUp. You see the green and the gray parts?
Yes.
I could probably almost get those down. Don't worry, I can do that. So, and did you model each of these buildings separately and then import them into the program? Would that be accurate?
Some of them I did. Some of them I did on site, but then I found it was just easier to just do them, copy and paste the terrain, and then model on top of that, then put it back in.
Well, and that's got to be because of how much is going on in your computer right now.
Oh yeah, the computer's not happy.
Individual pieces, absolutely. So yeah, tell us what we're looking at.
So this is West Hope 1, or the Richard Lloyd Jones House 1, which was a triangular scheme house.
That is fantastic. I'm fascinated by the Richard Lloyd Jones house, the way he just varies the concrete blocks with glass, concrete blocks, glass. It's amazing. I think it's underrated for a design style because of the uniformity and how much light can come in. That's really amazing.
And then let's see over here. Let's see where.
You definitely have to show us some of the Goff designs as well, because I think a lot of Wright people who are fans of Frank Lloyd Wright don't necessarily step too far out of Frank Lloyd Wright, but they need to see the people that he influenced, because we know that Goff, am I right? Goff didn't study with Wright, but he sort of studied Wright, if that makes sense.
That's correct. So over here, this is the Bruce Goff designed athletic club. Not built, but as you can tell, his influence definitely seems very, I don't know the word.
Oh, I think I recognize the building in the glass building to the left.
Oh yeah, so.
Certainly right, isn't it? Rogers Lacey, I think.
Yeah.
I can't believe you've actually modeled that as well. I think that would have been a fantastic design. It bothers me that it wasn't built, because I could see someone building that today.
Oh yeah. It's a beautiful design, and I just decided to replace the hotel that's on that site with Rogers Lacey.
Well, it's your city. You get to upgrade it the way you think it should be, right?
Kinda. I was like, whatever's proposed for Tulsa, or not proposed. In a few cases.
Right.
And yeah, this building right here, that's the Petroleum Club building.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely has the Frank Lloyd Wright theme.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Now, is that already, or is that, no?
Yeah, that was built.
Okay. And that was designed by Goff as well?
No, it was designed by a company, not a company, a firm in the 60s. I can't remember which firm it was.
Yeah, you can definitely tell there's actually another Wright building that was built by the Taliesin Associated Architects after he died that has a similar feel to that. So, and obviously, just so everyone who's watching will understand that, the reason this is moving in the choppy way that it is because you're processing a lot of information right now. Your computer is doing a lot of work. Now, this looks very familiar. I think I've seen this in Buffalo.
Yes, this is the service station that Wright designed for Bradingham City. He did about 3 different variations of it, and I proactively put this in because on a trip to Tulsa in 1928, I think it was 1928, he saw the Phillips Petroleum buildings, the little tiny buildings, and was like, those need to be more, or something to the effect of that. And so he designed this for the Skelly Company, the Skelly Oil Company in Tulsa originally, but then changed to Phillips later on. And I was like, oh, that would be perfect for this corner.
Yeah, that looks great. Yeah, and it makes sense how it would work in an urban environment. You know, I think a lot of people maybe don't know Wright's sort of his idea on this design was that those are actually hanging gas pumps that hang from those cantilevers. And the idea was that you wouldn't, an out of control car wouldn't blow up the gas pumps if it ran into them or ran underneath. So the only thing I found strange was that the lines are supposed to run over into the back where the tanks would be further back in the building. But in the design that I saw, there's a fireplace in between the middle of those, which seems like a little weird thing to put right as gas lines go over the roof. Seems a little strange, especially with those staircases, those two waterfall staircases that go up to like a waiting room above. You know, a lot of us don't think about back in the day, you stopped and somebody serviced your car for you. You didn't actually pump your own gas or wash the windshield or do all that. Somebody else would do that for you. And so you'd have a place to wait, you know, while that got done. It would make sense in a city like Tulsa too, that you'd want a nice sitting room to go into. So that's fantastic. That looks really good. Thank you so much for modeling that, because it's definitely something we don't get to see very often. And you can see a variation if you go to the Pierce Arrow Museum in Buffalo.
Or Lindholm.
Or the version, yes, the Lindholm Service Station in Cloquet, Minnesota, or I hope I said it right. Who knows?
Cloquet. I don't know.
I don't know either. So I kind of, one day I'll say it with the Cloquet and sometimes I'll say it Cloquet. I like to just bounce it around. Yeah, so what other Goff designs do we have here? Because I know he did some very unusual things.
Oh, we have his famous Boston Avenue United Methodist Church.
And was it built?
Yes. Controversially, it's still claimed not to be a Goff, but I've been in enough Goffs to know this is a Goff. And he actually has signed drawings.
Got it.
For it. So it's like, it's kind of obvious. They don't claim it, but it's a Tulsa thing. Let's see, what else? Oh, so he designed a cathedral, and
wow,
one of his cathedrals looks like the Sagrada Familia.
Yes, that is so unusual. Look at that. So where was this designed to go?
It didn't say. So I just put it on the plot where Holy Family Cathedral is for Tulsa.
That's really fantastic looking. I love the, and you can see some, because I'm so immersed in Frank Lloyd Wright, I really see some of his, the influence from the projects that were going to be done in Lake Tahoe or San Marcos in the desert. You know, Wright didn't do a whole lot that was vertical, so it's interesting to see that very vertical here, but obviously he's designing cathedrals, so it makes sense for him to go very tall and vertical, but also geometric. That's pretty great.
Let's see. Let's see. He also does.
Yeah, go ahead.
So he designed the Phillips Tower, or the Phil Tower. This was not built. This variation is based on one of his drawings that he did. I think it pretty much yells to the skyline. Mm-hmm. If only it was built. And we have the Tulsa Club behind it.
Okay.
Version 1 of the Tulsa Club. So that's pretty much what this is entirely a model of just what downtown Tulsa could have been.
Yeah, that's really impressive to be able to show and to put that much work into that. That's clearly a lot that you've put into the project. And how cool is that you've got this designed and then can, you know, use that to share. So, okay, I've been to this house, and the next one you're getting ready to show. I am fascinated that you spent this much time. This had to have been forever. So tell us about what we're looking at right now.
So this is the Price Jr. residence, owned by my good friend Catherine Lynn Hart. She actually helped me with the project to make sure we did it accurate and proper. And I think it's the first model of its kind to feature the full design of West Hope Hillside in its entirety, with the West Peters addition, and I threw in a few unbuilt Frank Lloyd Wright pieces into it.
Okay.
So let's see where.
So I think, is Catherine on the foundation, or she was at one point on the foundation board?
I think she still is, if I'm not mistaken.
So he was very kind to give me a tour of this house a couple of years ago when I came to visit, when I was in Bartlesville. My brain I lost where it was. You can put the rug in. Holy cow, you can have a rug right in there, and a chair from the Price Tower. Wow. Mm-hmm. So this is a very large Usonian, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's a wealthy person's Usonian house.
Just wait till I model Nesbitt. Oh boy, that's Nesbitt, the Carmel project. Oh my gosh.
In this house, the living room is enormous, right? And the kitchen is actually quite large, but being able to say you've also modeled the West Peters additions, that's a pretty big deal, actually, because he really expanded this house later on after Wright's death, and it went quite far, actually. It's a very big addition.
Oh yes, it started out as like a small playroom, and 3 different schematics later, it finally got to where it was. But Caroline loved this house, and she put every effort into making sure everything was done proper to what Wright would have probably wanted.
I'm loving the fact that I can actually, I'm remembering those tall cupboards on the left there that, you could put paintings and things against. This huge, the expansive windows looking out. I mean, it really does marry the interior and exterior of the building. Obviously, if you're in the actual space and can see all that amazing greenery outside and the expansiveness, yeah, that's pretty impressive. It's a lot of work, dude.
And modeling the Price Tower Hassocks.
Yeah, that's amazing too. That's a lot as well to do. Now the nice thing is that once you've built one, it's Control C for copy and paste. Right? You're kind of you can copy and paste them, but there's a lot of work into modeling that. And we're not talking about normal right angles, are we?
No. And this table was, I can't remember who designed it. I think it was Bruce Brooks Pfeiffer. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But this table was designed for the house, and it's not there anymore, but one of the family members has it. But this design is a really cool design, in my opinion. It's a mosaic piece, but I couldn't really put all the mosaic tile in it unless I wanted to go insane. So I based all the colors on what was in the photo.
That's fantastic too. I mean, that's just really impressive that you put it all in there. I mean, even down to the grout lines in the floor. I mean, you've got the long brick. The only thing I don't think you've been able to do is color the mortar between the verticals. Does this house normally have colored mortar?
I didn't notice it at all, actually.
And maybe
which is kind of surprising. I was like, wait a second, they didn't color the mortar? Maybe I'm not paying attention, but so here's the West Peters edition. Now I'm not entirely finished with this part yet, but
well, we know West Peters loves circles, so
obvious.
Great circles in here.
Tons. The bathroom in this edition is pretty amazing.
You even did the blocks correctly in the fireplace. It's impressive. Yes, this red bathroom I had forgotten. Holy cow. Yes.
I was like, I showed Catherine when I modeled the toilet. I was like, should I tile the toilet too? It would cohesively go very well.
That's funny.
I was like, I had to throw a few humorous parts in this. This modeling the toilets can be a little challenging. You need a little humor in the when you're doing the curves.
Yeah, there's a lot of work there, and actually, I really like that space. It doesn't exactly feel right to me. It feels definitely like William Wesley Peters, but I like that because I don't need it to be exactly Frank Lloyd Wright. I like seeing a different idea, even if it still meets the same sort of principles, you know?
Yeah, that's the key. Is to as long as you meet the principles, you can change the geometry. And this perfectly is a good example of that. Wes Peters knew how to extrapolate the ideas of Frank Lloyd Wright, but make it his own. Barstow Community Center is a great example of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, one thing I love about this house, and everybody loves about this house, is the desk.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that took ages to do, and I didn't put the full cabinets in. I wanted just to show that off entirely.
Yeah, the work that they did. I mean, that house is just really well done. They spent time and money on that house a lot, very well, and I can tell you really spent a lot of your time getting the modeling done correctly, which is so nice because you know you're sort of creating something that can be around for years and years and years and years. Like this can outlive the house itself, you know. And we don't like to think about that, but at some point, you know, your digital creation can be around for much longer.
And I think that's what Rosine and I and several others are doing, is trying to make these models accessible so that they can outlive the house and show Wright's full vision, where money is not a problem in our world of digital. And
you know, I know we're moving pretty quickly toward a time when we'll be able to throw on VR goggles and see this, experience this almost as if we're right there, in a way, with the textures rendered, you know, right then, and be able to really immersively feel like we're in it. And you know, this is such a good way to sort of to visualize what the architect meant. It's almost like we can get to be in Wright's head just a little bit, you know, because he clearly could see these things in a way that most of us can't, just by looking at plans.
And that's the one thing. I started all this stuff because I was like looking at a Frank Lloyd Wright plan, and I'm like, you know, it'd be cool to see this in person, but I can't go to in person. So I just started modeling. And I was like, well, this works.
So what else interesting about Hillside do you want to show us?
I think that's pretty much all.
It's a great house, though, and it's got some really good spaces. I think actually it's one of the few Frank Lloyd Wright kitchens that I know it's been adjusted and, you know, changed. I really like how big the kitchen is. This is a great view from outside, though, so we can really see how much glass he uses and the way he brings in that copper roof. You know, when they can afford to do a nice roof, I'm thinking of you know, Florida Southern College in Florida, where I'm from, where they couldn't afford to do the roofs the way he would have originally wanted. So, yeah, that looks great.
And my contribution to the design is the light pole and this trellis.
Nice.
I was like, Catherine, you need to put this in there. She wants more lights. I was like, this works.
Was that original, the way Ray had designed it there?
Actually, Wes Peters put in the pergola for the and the light pole for the Playhouse edition, but it was never built. And I was like, well, bring it to modern code, because the whole trellis went all the way to the building over here and extended about out here. And I was like, but how does one get through the gate without bumping their head on it? So it's like, sometimes you have to think about these things when you start doing things.
Yeah, right. Well, that looks great. Thank you so much for sharing hillside with us. That's the Harold Price Jr. home in Bartlesville. So, and it is an existing house. You've added a few things to it, but how great is that we get to see what it would look like? So, oh wow, this looks different. This is certainly a different architect.
Oh yes, one of Goff's students, Bill Ryan, who passed away a few years ago. A good friend of mine, actually. And so I was modeling his buildings after he passed, and I have to say, this is what made SketchUp break literally on my computer.
It looks like, because you got a lot of parabolas and you got some unusual geometry here.
Yeah, I had to weave this whole entire roof line by line. I could not use the tools to follow or anything. I had to literally stitch it by hand.
Wow.
And this is a small scale. Bill did a larger version that I'm still working on, that I have pulled up actually. But this is several editions that he did back in the 60s, originally designed in 1959 for Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And it was built, doesn't quite look like this. I added a few of his additions that he wanted to do to it, but were not realized. So let's see what he was a very good principled organic architect.
So it's like a poured concrete, kind of using the plasticity of concrete to create these shapes?
Yes. Thin shell concrete.
That is great. Well, you've even laid out the interior in this one as well?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And what's the name of this building?
It's called Chapel on the Hill. It used to be a Lutheran church, actually. It's now just a wedding chapel.
Yeah, but if there's a certain kind of wedding you're looking for, this is the place. You know, if you're wanting I guess a sci-fi wedding, it might help. But also, you're wanting a very memorable and interesting experience. Now, I would assume that, have you been here in person yourself?
Yes. I'm actually good friends with the owners, and they said I'm allowed to give tours, just have to let them know when I want to do it.
Yeah, how cool is that?
I was like, can I own the building eventually?
Right?
I would love to own it, but there's so much space. I'm like, I don't know what I can do with it.
That is great. So is it popular as a wedding venue?
Yes. It sits on the hill in Broken Arrow, and Broken Arrow is not really, it's a small town, but not much. But when you go on the highway to Tulsa and you're going past this, you see this white giant domed structure. It looks like a Conestoga wagon on the hill, and you're like, huh, that's a funky looking building. And that's how I kind of got to meet Bill, is through this building.
Well, that's fantastic, especially when you can meet somebody whose vision brought the building to life so long ago, because really this is impressive that this building was done in the time frame that it was. And you said he added on to it over time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the space is to the left, is like an addition that was later added?
So the original Sunday school portion was like right here. And then about the 60s, 70s, he added this portion to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, they would add another addition. That's a 2-story addition over here. So it kind of becomes an L shape. But I didn't have the plans to that, unfortunately. But yeah, this one definitely broke SketchUp almost.
Yeah, I can totally imagine. That's a great, and you even got the topography in there so we can get an idea of how it fits with this site. That's really, really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that one. And
so the final one is a larger version of that, but for Stillwater, Oklahoma. Now, Bill, the pastor was left before they could do this, and the new pastor was not very keen on mid-century modern architecture. So they kept the original building that they had. And this is incomplete because I don't have the sanity to do this roof.
I'm assuming it's a similar roof to the last one.
Yes, but it's a larger scale version of it.
Yeah, I can imagine though if we stretched white fabric over that, we would be getting sort of the shape of the roof.
Yeah. So you can sort of kind of see where my guidelines are to.
Oh yeah. Wow, I can't imagine that. That'd be crazy to do.
I can't imagine if building it.
No, that's got to be the harder part. Is how do you read the plans and figure out how to even do it? That's just crazy.
Yeah, I even had the plans, and I was sitting here going, what did I get myself into? Because this is not an easy design. And one of the cool features is on the altar behind it is supposed to be glass collet. So it kind of, so I felt like this had more of like a seashell type design to it, very nautical and things like that. So that kept with the plan. But color scheme and everything is all chosen by me.
Well, because it's an unbuilt design, right? So they didn't get to that particular part of it. I think it's great. I think what you've done is really fantastic. And I love these strange buildings, you know, these ones where you go, I have no idea what that's supposed to be, but it's so cool looking.
Yeah, one of my favorites is the staircase.
Mm-hmm.
That was tough to model.
I can imagine. It seems very, there is a hint of Gaudi in here, the Sagrada Familia with all these sort of, you know, free-forming shapes. This almost looks like a high heel for somebody with a club foot or something. It's weird.
It is. And I was like, dang it, why did I never know about this? I wish I knew Bill a little bit longer so I could have asked him, like, why did you design it this way?
Right? That is crazy. Well, those are fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing them with us.
You're welcome.
So what else are you working on now? Are you working on any of the architectural work? I mean, in the midst of going to school and trying to do that remotely and design all of these things you have to do for these classes?
I'm not really doing pretty much anything here. I just go with the flow, really. Like if a design comes to me, I'll just put it in, much like this one.
And I do see there that you have at least one other right structure that you're working on. I think you've been posting it to the Right Attitude lately, so I'm sure that we'll
Oh yeah,
chat about that before we sign off.
let's see if it opens.
Well, you have a few things open right now. You know, you've got a couple.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see where it's.
You know, while you're doing that, I'm working on putting together a live stream with several of our modelers, people who've been modeling things in the Right community. So I'm hoping to get you and Rosine and one or two other guys on board to do a live stream where we can take questions from the audience and really be able to show off and talk about some of the specifics, maybe really get into it. Because I think we have some people who might want to try their hand at modeling small things, you know, and just haven't taken that leap yet because they don't know what to expect. And it'd be great to talk to you about some of the things you've seen that's similar, some of the problems that, you know, only people modeling and rendering architecture can share with us, you know, the things that you deal with, and talk about your own ideas of Wright and other architects' ideas. You know, that would be kind of a fun thing to do. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And then in the coming months, get you all together. We got to get Rosine. We have to wake him up in the middle of the night, though, so we can do it since he's in Bangladesh, you know?
Yeah. Let's see, I don't know who else. I can't remember shoot, I know his name. Was it Anthony? Starts with an A, I can't remember.
Yeah, it might be Anthony.
I only know him by Goff Macklin, though. That's how I met him on SketchUp. Many moons ago.
So it would be great to be able to get you, several of you together, just to sort of talk shop and let the rest of us listen, because you've put a lot of time and effort into preparing this. Okay, so this is pretty fantastic. Now, walk us through what we're looking at now.
Oh, well, if it stops loading errors. So this is the Chavin house. Where is it? Chavin? I don't know how to pronounce.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm from the South. We put an apostrophe on that and call it shaven. But
Yeah, same.
who knows
with you
what it actually is. But yes, what a fantastic, I love this rear entry that you don't kind of, from the carport, you don't even really know you're going in the front door.
I know. It's a beautiful house. Still trying to find the music stand drawings. I cannot find them whatsoever.
We should explain that hole right there between the
Yeah.
just four hats all facing each other, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a conversation pit. I even had to model these footstools without drawings. How to do it with photos, because I was like,
Oh.
The plans did not even show it. I was like, what's going on here? So sometimes you have to do that. You have to just take some creative liberties to figure out what to do. And so let's see. Yeah, this one is definitely still a work in progress, but as you can tell, the stone is three-dimensional.
Yes, it's great. It's really good.
It took me 8 hours to do that. To do all the walls, copy and paste one section at a time, and then intersect it.
Yeah, I think you're crazy. But even just doing the board and batten walls right there, being able to see the cross section of the board and batten walls is so useful to understand the way that Usonian buildings work too. I think that's a bit of, it's kind of hard to explain that to somebody, to be able to actually see it modeled and be able to show them how thin the walls really are and how they're built together. I think you're, and also this really helps us see, it's weird to be able to say it, but when you don't put all the greenery in yet, we can see the way it fits with the topography of the land. That's really cool.
That was not easy to do because they've changed some of the landscape a little bit over time. So this is what it should have looked like, but they of course flattened this area out and added a retaining wall over here. So this is kind of flat. But
it's kind of like we get to see into the architect's brain, here.
Mm-hmm.
What he's originally thinking about.
And I'm all over the roof
It's
completely. Three-dimensional roof.
Wow. You're a little obsessed. I love it.
I was like, I have the time. I might as well make it accurate.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Let's see. And then this is one of my concepts that I was working on for my flower shop.
Well, we can see the Ife Jones
Mm-hmm.
influence heavily. I mean, very heavily. I like it.
So this is what Goth revival Art Nouveau looks like in my head.
That's great, though. I love it. And I love the intricacy of it,
I was like, how many curves can I throw in here without going overboard?
I particularly like the way that you've mixed the repetitive shapes with this sort of freeform. It gives the freeform, that freeform Art Nouveau look a little more structure.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, what else did I have?
I mean, Faye Jones, I talked to the son of the partner that Faye Jones worked with, whoever was his partner in his firm, and the firm still exists,
Yeah.
and I've talked to the son of the partner, and he really talked about, once they did that first chapel, Thorn Crown, I think was first. It could be wrong, but then
No, you're right.
They kept getting asked for more chapels. You do that, and then you get somebody going, man, we'd like to do a chapel for Mildred Cooper. let's do a memorial chapel for Miss Cooper. And, you build one, then they built another one elsewhere. And they've done quite a number of chapel-like places with that similar design, because it's, you get known for something. So what are we looking at here?
So this is the Frank Lloyd Wright pop-up for Marginal Right. I think that's Marginal.
His sister, Maginal?
Yeah. Why did I think there was an R? I don't know.
Well, it's all right. It's a contraction of Maggie Ellen.
Oh.
Maginal. It's a weird. I mean, it's a strange contraction, but yeah, I've heard it everywhere. Maginal. So, and she was a brilliant artist in her own right. I don't know if you've seen any of her work, but she did beautiful drawings. She drew a lot of people, illustrated covers of magazines and book covers. Really beautiful work.
And I started this actually a few days ago, and this was like about 3 hours worth of work.
So did Wright design this for his sister?
Yes.
I had never heard of this. That's amazing. And where would this have gone?
I honestly, there is no location for it.
Was it meant to be like in a store?
I think it was just a pop-up shop for, it doesn't, there's not much on the project. There's only like a floor plan and like an elevation, not an elevation.
Yeah.
A perspective drawing.
Wow.
Two of those. One is more professional than the other. But that's all that was on the plans. And I was like, so how do I model this? And so I just got a copy of the plans and just laid them down. I was like, okay, I get it. One cabinet's the same, repeated 4 times. And roof is basically a simple structure.
I think that's great. That is fantastic. I can't wait to see when you finally actually do the rest of it and maybe give it some. Are you going to give it some wood grain or make it feel like it's done out of wood and whatever else?
Yeah. I thought the interesting thing was the planters on each end.
Yeah, right?
It's like, that's clever. I don't know where this would have been, but...
It almost feels like a trade show booth.
Yeah.
That's kind of strange to say, but... Well, that is fantastic. So, what you're obviously working on these things. You're in school, though, but what's next? What are you doing after this?
Honestly, I don't know.
And when you get done with school, what's the plan? Are you looking to work in a firm in the interior design? What is your thinking?
I would probably work for a firm. Mostly because, well, you kind of need to be licensed, much like an architect.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, it's like we're at the stage point where we start learning that professional practice, and then we start like branching out next summer to firms.
Nice. That makes sense. Yeah, get your feet wet.
Yeah.
That is so good.
I think I've got a good resume.
Yeah, well, you've got a great calling card so far. These are all pretty impressive, and your skills, you have a lot of marketable skills, I think, for any firm. You bring a lot of skills to help people visualize what they might be looking forward to as well, not just in terms of creativity, but being able to help an established firm with interior designers to be able to share with people what that looks like. I have a friend of mine who went to architecture school a couple of years before I did. She actually graduated. I did not, and which was fine. I'm happy where I am. But she told me her first 10 years she just drew HVAC plans for an architecture firm. She didn't get to do anything exciting stuff. So we all kind of know that going into those worlds now, there's a lot of slog work. There's a lot of that work that may not be fun, but it seems like you've got a great thing to start with, is be able to show that you have this modeling skill, the rendering skills, the ability to bring that forward. I think you're going to help people really see what the design could look like, and that's pretty great.
I think so. It's not easy to model, but it helps to give the person visual, because I'm the same way. If just looking at a blueprint, you're like, what? You look at an elevation, you're like, okay, kind of. And then you like see like the actual model, and you're like, oh, I see now.
Yeah, it's hugely important. I think underrated sometimes. it's like I tried to explain to some. I was asked to give a talk once about Frank Lloyd Wright, and they said we can't let you use audio visual. It won't work. And it was actually at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art there in Bentonville, Arkansas, and they said to me, "Can you just talk about Frank Lloyd Wright without using pictures?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to talk about architecture without pictures. That's like writing a song about smell. Like, I don't know how this is supposed to work."
Exactly.
But I was able to tell his life story, some of his life story. And I ended with, I just had one picture. I went to Walgreens and printed out a 24 by 36 poster of falling water, because I wanted to tell the story of the creation of falling water. But, it'd be like if you were trying to explain to somebody how interior design is going to work, but you just showed them line drawings, like just perspective and floor plan. Like, that doesn't, most people's brains don't work that way. They work three-dimensionally, and you've got a major step up by being able to show them those three-dimensional pictures. So, I mean, I think you've got a great skill that other people maybe don't have, and that hopefully will take you pretty far. So,
yeah,
Jeff,
I modeled a house behind me, so.
Oh, wait a second. That's actually a real model.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. So we have to just stop. I'm going to stop sharing your screen so we can actually see you. And we'll see the house you might. Now, which house is this?
So this is actually what I modeled for a friend of mine that was wanting to design a house. And so I was like, so over the time I've been designing this house, even though he didn't choose my design, I still went with it. And was like, so I designed it last summer, and then finally this summer added the roof. I learned a thing or two about roofs. They need structure.
I'm sure.
Otherwise, they start bowing because the glue weighs it down.
Mm-hmm.
So the roof is a cedar-shaped roof.
That's pretty impressive. That's a very big project too. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
It looks great from this side. Holy cow.
Yeah, it looks better far away, but like most art, looking up closer, like see every flaw.
Yeah, and you're also looking for those flaws, and the rest of us are just impressed with the design idea. That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have behind me because I'm pretty proud of it. I want to model more.
Yeah, well, and you want to do it in person and 3D. It's amazing that you've got both of those skills. Jeff, anything you want to add before we finish our first talk today?
I don't have anything else.
Well, you've given us so much to think about, and I know that our viewers are going to be really excited to see the work that's being done by someone who is just starting out in a career, learning. And if this is how far you've already gone with just having done this for a little bit, I'm really impressed by what you're going to accomplish over the next couple of decades. So I'm excited for you, Jeff. Thank you for joining me. I know you'll be my guest again in the future.
Definitely.
And I hope it was a good time for you. It didn't feel like an hour went by that quickly, did it?
I know, it didn't feel like it at all.
Well, I know how long it takes you to do some of your work, so an hour is nothing.
No.
Willing to 3D set a stone wall in a Yosemite house. My guest today has been Jeff Thielemier, a fantastic modeler and in amazing 3D modeling world. He models Frank Lloyd Wright designs, Bruce Goff designs, a couple of other people that other architects, your own work. And of course, one day soon you'll be doing that in a career as an interior designer. You're studying at the Tulsa Community College, and we just thank you for being our guest today.
Well, thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. And that's where I'll cut it when it's time to end the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
This was fun.
Yeah.
I loved doing it.
And you got to show off, your skills.